I only purchased plants 5 months this year. Welcome to my 2024 houseplant Wrapped. It is time once again for my annual plant spending review. So I've done this, I think the last 2 years in 2022 and 2023, where I went over all of my plant spending, literally transaction by transaction, sharing with y'all what I was spending my money on towards this hobby slash job that I have of plant collecting. And it's time to do it again. But this time I'm not going to go through transaction by transaction. I spent significantly less money this year, and it just doesn't make as much sense to go through that. I feel like that's not the fun part. The fun part is the sort of analysis bit, in my opinion. So I've done all the crunching of numbers, added everything up, and we can go through that together. Before I get into it, I want to say if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanting content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanting journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around, watch some more of my videos, and subscribe to my channel. If you are not new here, welcome back. I appreciate you returning. You're probably more likely to understand this than a newcomer, but all are welcome here. Let's get into these numbers. So I have written them down in my handy dandy notebook, and we're just gonna jump straight in. So this year on my plant hobby, so excluding all the things that I paid for, like working on merch and Photoshop and travel expenses to like Malvern and whatever, aside from that, just solely for plants and plant care supplies, planting equipment, I spent £1,043.93 this year, which compared to last year in 2023, where I spent £1,439.98, and in 2022, a staggering £2,906.76. I can't believe I spent that much 2 years ago. It's kind of crazy, but it happened. And I am so pleased how much I have reduced the amount that I'm spending on my plants and their care this past year. So I've done about £400 less than last year in spending, which is an absolute feat. I know that it's an expensive hobby, and getting new plants, it's kind of a bit of a shopping addiction in some cases. So I'm really glad that I've been able to lower that a bit. It's definitely been one of the goals that I've been trying to work on this year, is to not spend a disgusting amount of money on houseplants. And I think I have done so. So of that approximate £1,000 that I spent in 2023, about £300 was on houseplants, like specifically buying new plants for my collection, and then $750, just under, was spent on supplies and the maintenance cost, one might say, of keeping my collection alive and well. No matter what, I will almost always be spending more on maintenance of plants and the supplies than I do on the plants themselves. Pots tend to be expensive, substrates and stuff, they cost money, lights, all of that stuff just tends to add up quite a lot more in my experience than the plants themselves. And I think I've found cheaper ways to buy plants and more often can swap stuff for houseplants as opposed to things and supplies. It's not as easy to sort of swap for them, so that doesn't really happen as much. So firstly, I want to talk about how I managed to save money on houseplants. Compared to last year, I saved nearly £300 comparatively on houseplants specifically, not on supplies. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I think a big portion of that is because I was able to successfully complete a 6-month houseplant ban. I didn't buy any houseplants whatsoever. No money was exchanged for plants for me for 6 whole months, which is like actually a huge feat for me. I had never successfully done a long-term plant ban before. I've done a couple months here and there in the last 5 years, but 6 months is a massive feat for me, and I'm really, really proud of myself for sticking to that and really sticking to my guns on it and not breaking that at all, even though I had opportunities to do so. During that time and further on into the year, if I was really, really jonesing for houseplants, getting something new, seeing something that I was like, I absolutely need to get this plant, for the most part, I tried to swap for it first and see if there was a way I could trade to get this plant as opposed to paying for it, because I don't know, it's good to save money where we can, and if someone's got a plant that they don't want and I've got something that they want and we could do a little swapperoonie, I feel like that is best for all parties involved. And so I did get several plants through swaps during that time. I also got some plants through gifts from my followers during that time, though I did not, I'm pretty positive to the best of my knowledge, as much as I remember, I didn't accept any plants from shops during that time either. Like, I didn't do a haul video until, I think it was May? Oh gosh. Yes, it was May. It had to have been May. Yeah, my Grow Tropicals haul was in May. I also did a bit of a Malvern haul, but for that, it was mostly planties, supplies, and like goodies. I did buy one plant then, but even still, I didn't do any major plant shopping for the entire first half of this year, which is pretty freaking crazy. I also do feel a little bit justified in spending some money on plants each year because this is my job. I'm lucky enough, I'm in that fortunate position where it's tax deductible, which is great. I mean, I still have to pay it, but I don't pay the VAT on it, or I get it back at the end of the year, or whatever. Either way, it's part of my job, and so it's great that I am able to do that. I also am in the fortunate position where I do collaborations with plant shops, and they end up sending me plants for free in exchange for me creating content about those plants. But I didn't do as much of that this year as I have in previous years. I think I did like 2 YouTube hauls and maybe a few reels / TikToks kind of thing, but it really wasn't that much compared to previous years. I've really, really been trying to be super selective with the plants that I have brought into my home, regardless of whether or not I'm paying for them. But I do think that I have approximately 300 pounds worth of free plants this year, which I'm pretty sure is lower than previous years. I think last year it was something like 600 pounds. So about half of the plants that I am ever getting are going to be free just purely because this is my job. So I am very lucky in that regard. But I think it's definitely possible to do most of my plant gaining through swaps and trades. I did it for 6 months at the beginning of the year, and I was just fine then. And I think it helped curb my plant addiction a little bit as well, which is good. I've also been generally trying to downsize this year and literally lower the number of houseplants that I have because I have been spending so much in previous years. And I mean, my plants are growing incredibly. You can see most of my background right here is plants, and it's great. I love it. But it means that they're taking up more and more space, and so I've been trying to reduce the number of plants that I've had, and I have been successful in that. But part of that is to, when I get rid of a plant, not go and buy new ones to replace them. It is always very tempting, but I am trying my best not to do that. So I think that's my basic summary for how I have saved money on plants. Let's look at the numbers though. I have done my classic graph making, and we can look at my plant spending. First off, my plant spending by month. I only purchased plants 5 months this year. The other 7 months, I did not buy plants. So January through April, as well as November and October last year, those were the 6 months I was on my No Boy. And then May time, I got a 7-pound plant from Malvern, or it was 14 pounds, but Lisa and I split it. And so I paid 7 and she paid 7, and we split the plant. And then June came around, and June's my birthday month, and so I figured because I had done so well on my no-buy, I deserved a little bit of a treat. So I spent £100 to get myself a variegated Rhaphidophora tetrasperma and a variegated dragon scale alocasia, which I'm totally not mad that I broke my plant ban for that. I wasn't on a plant ban at that point. After the 6 months passed, which was kind of like my hard goal, I was willing to see how it went. And if I managed to not buy plants, great. If I bought plants, that's absolutely fine, as long as I was being aware of how I was spending. I also didn't buy anything in July, but in August and September, we had some spending. The one in September was my Gadgiana, which was my wedding plant, which was very exciting. And then November as well. What the heck did I buy in November? Oh yeah, I bought my variegated cast iron plant, which was the entirety of that £72. So it definitely was not a cheap plant. I think that's the most expensive plant that I bought this year, was my cast iron plant, which I'm not mad about it. I bought it for a specific purpose. I really like the plant, and I'm glad that I bought it. Another bit of analysis I like to do is looking at my new plants by genus. And for this list, I do want to say it's all new plants that have come into me, whether I bought them, I swapped them, they were given to me. And this is including propagations as well, just because I like seeing where my mind is going, what I'm like hyper focusing on during each year. So this year, you can see I have been focusing hardcore on begonias. I have been really, really trying to get better at them. I have gained 11, at least, different types of begonias. I could have missed some things here and there in this. This is to the best of my recollection, all of the plants that I've received. But I think at least 11 begonias this year of different varying types, just to try things out and experiment with them and learn. I've also gained loads and loads of alocasias because those are some of my absolute favorites, and I'm on a bit of an alocasia kick recently. And Hoyas, but with my Hoyas, most of them have been small cuttings, and I think I got most of them through swaps. So it wasn't it's not a big like space suck, if that makes sense. I find it really easy to get Hoyas as opposed to getting other plants that are quite a lot bigger. There's several things in here that I got 2 or 3 of in this last year, and I think 9 different things that I only got 1 of, so that's the sort of other category at the top there as well. And I feel like that is a pretty good, well-rounded graph. You can see the things that I'm focusing on a lot more. It's the begonias and alocasias. I also want to show my new plants from 2023, where you can see cacti and succulents were my top thing that I was going for, followed by philodendrons. I was really on the philodendron hype, and then suddenly this year in 2024, I was just like, something switched in my brain, and I just didn't like most of the philodendrons I had anymore. I was finding all of them very, very difficult, and alocasia is still in there quite heavily, and jungle cacti. It's when I got, I think, almost all of my jungle cacti I got last year, so that is fun. But it's really interesting to see the difference between the 2 years and where my focus has been, where, like, I have massively decreased my philodendron love and hugely increased my begonia love, but alocasias have kind of stayed pretty constant in there. And I think that's just going to be the case because I love them so freaking much. I'm pretty sure they're one of my favorite genuses. They're just so freaking cool. I love it. And then getting into plant supplies, I've definitely done quite a lot of saving this year as well, but the difference is not nearly as much as it was for like the actual plants I was spending it on. So last year I spent £843 on supplies, where this year I only spent £100 less at $742. So I feel like plant supplies, it's definitely something that I can't skimp and save on as much, but I can say it would be a whole lot more, and it was a whole lot more in 2022 because I was still much earlier on in my houseplant journey. I've been collecting houseplants for over 5 years at this point, and so I have just generally amassed quite a lot of supplies. I have pots out the wazoo, I've got propagation vessels, I've got all the different isopropyl alcohols and hydrogen peroxide and different fertilizers and all of that stuff that, like, yes, they are consumable, and so I will eventually get through them, but I don't need to be like as reactive to things. I can just use what I have already. Also, I'm not really buying cash pots. I mean, I did buy some cash pots this year, but compared to previous years when I've been increasing my collection and I've needed to get more cash pots to like fit things, I haven't needed to do that this year because I haven't been increasing my plants nearly as much. I've also tried to get things secondhand or thrifted where possible. A lot of my sort of terrarium and no drainage containers that I have got this year have been secondhand. That's kind of been the goal. I'll go into a charity shop and see what I can find in there, what sort of vase I can buy that I can turn into a vessel for no drainage. And so if I can do things like secondhand, I will. I do find, however, like I said earlier, swapping for plant supplies is much more difficult. At our plant swaps, we do tend to have a free table where plant supplies goes on, and I have collected stuff from there before, but I don't really as often swap plant supplies. I do with my friends. Like if Claire wanted a moss pole and I had one that I wasn't using, I would go and give it to her. And then I'm sure I would get something in return for her, whether it be a plant or a self-watering pot or some semi-hydro or literally whatever. Like with my friends, I do as much swapping as possible, but it's less easy than swapping plants where I can just go out and be like, I have all these plants. Do you want to swap with me? Also, I think I've had a pretty good year pest-wise. I've been, I think, a little bit more on top of my pest care, and I've been working towards being more preventative than reactive. And I think that does really change where the money goes. If my money goes into preventing, I typically end up spending less money than if I'm reacting to a problem. Does that make sense? It does to me. So I've been able to save in that department as well. I am, again, also lucky that I do get sent things for free. Typically it's substrates like Soil Ninja stuff and grow lights. Actually, I did buy some grow lights for myself this year, but for the most part, I do end up getting them from grow light providers to show off to you all. And so you can see how they work and how I like them in my collection and buy them yourself. So I am really, really lucky in that regard, but I also this year tried to only accept things that I really, really wanted and would use. I didn't just accept things willy-nilly that wouldn't easily fit into my home. I feel like in past years, someone reached out to me for a humidifier, and so I said yes, because I wanted to show y'all the humidifier, but in the end, that's not something that I needed in my home. And in the end, I just ended up selling it or giving it away or something because I just ended up not needing it. And so I've been a lot more critical about which sort of collaborations I do this year when it comes to plant supplies. But I'm almost always going to be doing soil and grow light collaborations because I feel like those are the things that I use most and they're the easiest things to kind of share with y'all. So that's kind of how I've been able to save money on supplies. But let's look at these graphs again. So while I was not buying houseplants for that 6 months of my no-buy, I was still buying supplies where I needed them and trying to just keep up with things and focus on maintaining my collection as much as I possibly could. And so I spent money on supplies through most of the year. Funnily enough, I didn't do any spending in January and February, but from March to December, I have been spending, and I feel like it's quite interesting to see. I did this last year where I showed what I counted as sort of the growing season from March to October time, and most of my spending was during that time. That is when things are happening the most, when I'm needing to buy more substrate, when I'm needing to get more moss pole supplies or plant supports or pots or anything like that. That's happening for the most part during the growing season. I have continued to get some things out of growing season, I think mostly in November and December because of Black Friday sales on supplies of things that I would already use. So I think I got some grow lights in there and some moss pole stuff. I tried to take advantage of sort of Black Friday sales where I could. And because I know these are products that I'm going to use regardless, if I can wait until November, December time and do it for Black Friday, I will. And then the other thing I like to do is go through and look at my supplies spending by type. And for that, I had 9 different categories. So they're pest control, grow lights, styling. So things like plant hacks stuff that was mostly for styling plants. Then pots, substrates, fertilizer, self-watering / no drainage, supports, and miscellaneous. So here's that graph. The thing that I spent the most on, supplies-wise, was pest control. And I'm pretty sure most of that is through my Predatory Mites subscription. I started that back up in, I think, June this year, and I really upped it. Whereas last year, I think I was getting like 20 sachets per month or per 6 weeks. But then this year I ramped that up to about 50 sachets of predatory mites against thrips. And I do only do them against thrips because that is the main pest that I have been struggling with in the last few years. I know I was dealing with flat mites kind of this time last year, and I only just washed all of the sulfur off my plants maybe like March time. March or April, maybe even May. I genuinely don't remember. It feels like it was so long ago at this point. But once I washed that all off, that's when I started to use the predatory mites again as a preventative thing. And so far, I have had like a very occasional experience with thrips here and there, but for the most part, it has been really good. And I think it's definitely been worth it to spend that money on pest control. I've also got some nematodes in that realm to get rid of fungus gnats. I did that twice this year, and I think that's pretty about normal for me. And like I said, I got some grow lights for myself this year as well. Relatively not that much spent on them, obviously, compared to the number of grow lights that I got through working with people, but it's still a chunk in there. And then surprisingly, I actually bought myself some substrate this year because I know for a fact that I just bought myself a bag of semi-hydro substrate from Soil Ninja, which I definitely could have just like texted them and asked for it, but it's one of those things that I do feel bad getting it for free all the time. So I'm like, I should just put in a purchase, just like a token purchase for the year, even though I did get more than just that. In the grand scheme of things, I did get quite a lot of substrate this year, and I am very appreciative of that. So thanks, Soil Ninja. If anyone's not tried Soil Ninja before, I highly recommend it. This isn't an ad for them, but I do work with them. And then one thing this year that wasn't on my last year's sort of list was fertilizer. I haven't spent money on fertilizer in a little while, but this year I decided to try some new ones just to like see what's out there, see the difference. So I tried Formulex, which was recommended to me by Johnny, the Bearded Plantaholic, and Kaylee Nurture System fertilizers, and I think they've done pretty good things for my plants. I feel like my plants have grown really well this summer, and so it possibly could be because of fertilization, but I've also just like been doing so many other things, like being very on top of watering and stuff, and not had pests, and so a myriad of things have gone into my plants growing well, and fertilizer could be one of them, but I'm not positive on that. But I did spend about 50 quid on fertilizer, and I'm not mad at that. I also spent a whole heck of a lot of money on self-watering and no drainage pots / vases / vessels, because that is something that I've really been trying to focus on. Putting things into self-watering or no drainage has been great for me because it's been like, I feel like it makes houseplanting more low maintenance, which is great for the chronic underwaterer me. And so I've put almost all of my very high water needs plants into those, so it makes things a whole heck of a lot easier. And then the last thing was supports, which is like moss poles and trellises and stuff. I did manage to find some front closure moss poles that are sold in Europe, and one of my patrons very kindly offered to like get them sent to her house and then ship them to me because the shop didn't sell to the UK, which kind of sucked, but it's okay. They very kindly offered that, and so I was able to put in an order with them, so I'm really excited to see how those are, whether or not I like them. we will find out together in a little bit, hopefully in the next week. I hope it's before Christmas that I get this package. But yeah, that's all of my spending. And to be honest, there's nothing in here that like screams out to me in both the supplies and the plant spending. Nothing is screaming like, error, why did you spend this much on one thing? This doesn't make any sense. Overall, I'm pretty proud of my discipline this year. I've worked genuinely really hard on trying to curb my plant spending and keep things at a little bit more of a reasonable level so I don't go like overboard in plants. Also, because I don't need new plants. I have like 200 plants. I think it's like 180 something plus propagations. I've got over 200 houseplants in my home. Why do I need to be continuing to get more? The answer is because I like them and they're pretty and I want to try them all. But I'm just being a lot more picky on it this year. And I'm very proud of myself for that. And I really hope that I can continue that on into 2025. That would be really cool if I can. I think I am gonna try and do a no-buy again from December to, oh gosh, do you think I can make it to April? Do you think I can do another 6 months again? I think I probably can. I'm going to try to do another 6 months no-buy. Like long term, I don't think I can do a whole year of no-buy. I feel like that is kind of unreasonable seeing as it's my job. And there are things that I like doing, like making haul videos and like trying out new plants and experimenting and stuff that getting new plants in for can be very useful. And yes, I will try and swap for them where I can or like work on collaboration videos and stuff. I don't think it's reasonable to say that I won't buy any plants. So I'm not gonna set myself a goal for all of 2025 to not buy plants, but maybe if I try and get through April or maybe through May. Do I need to do through May to get, so January, February? I think I'd have to go through May in order to get my 6 months, which I think is very unlikely because I'm going to the RES Melbourne Spring Festival again in May because it's a houseplant festival. Why wouldn't I go? So I don't think I'm going to be able to do 6 months. I'll try and do 5. And if I don't buy anything from Malvern, that would be great, but didn't happen this year and I don't know if it'll happen next year either. So it's fine. It's fine. I think if I do want to set a goal for all of 2025 though, it would be to keep all of my spending under £1,000. I was very close to it this year. I was 43 pounds off from keeping it under 1,000. So if I can do that in 2025, that would be amazing. But who knows? We never know what's going to happen next year, and something could happen where I need to do a whole bunch of crazy maintenance. Or I need to buy all these crazy plants. Probably not that one. But if I need to do some crazy maintenance, then I'm going to have to spend the money because I think it's worth it in order to keep my plants happy and alive. So we'll try and stick to the £1,000 budget, but who knows? The best we can do is hope and keep our fingers crossed that all goes well and we can make that happen. So yeah, that is my 2024 houseplant spending review. Like I said, I'm proud of myself. I think I did a good job. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future, and subscribe for more. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!